Hello everyone, my name is Rob Krug and I'm a Senior Solutions Architect for SonicWall. Today I'm going to be discussing the Capture Client, SonicWall's brand new next generation AV product for your endpoint threat protection. This product allows you to install a next generation antivirus client on all of your mobile devices, specifically your Windows and Mac laptops, so that even when you're not behind a firewall, you're safe. With the threat landscape that it is today, and we look at the zero-day infections that are possible, for example, the WannaCry exploit, when that detonates and it encrypts systems, that requires IT departments to dedicate resources in order to restore services. In this particular case, watching the WannaCry exploit detonate on a Windows 10 workstation and infecting the laptop to where all the data has been encrypted, you're now notified that you have to go and pay to get your data back. In this particular case, you want to be able to prevent this breach. Well, when you're behind a SonicWall product, when you're behind the SonicWall firewall, you can actually make sure that that download never actually takes place. You can prevent it with Capture. In this case, when the exploit is originally downloaded, Capture ATP on the firewall will prevent the file from being downloaded. This prevents zero-day infections from targeting workstations even when they're behind the SonicWall appliance. This is included in our next-generation firewalls, our email security platforms, our hosted email security platforms, and our secure mobile access appliances. This allows us to prevent zero-day infections with hardware or software gateways in networks in order to prevent a breach. We even have added this new notification system for admins so that email notifications go out to the admin listed in my SonicWall for that firewall product so that that zero-day notification, zero-day prevention notification is delivered to the end user. But what about if I'm not behind the firewall? This is the element of where next generation AV, or the endpoint client, Capture client, is required for all of your Mac and Windows devices. This allows you to make sure that even if you're not behind a firewall, you're secure. This is leveraged by SonicWall's Capture Client, a comprehensive endpoint protection solution. Partnered with a partner agreement with our friends over at SentinelOne, providing the next-gen AV as part of our inspection services, we're able to prevent zero-day infections even on the endpoints, even when they're not behind the firewall. In this particular case, I'm going to show through the steps of the Capture Client, specifically license management and the multi-tenant capabilities of the product. In this case, we're going to log into our My SonicWall account. You're going to add a client license. From here, I can type in a name. This can be a customer name, a product name, a deployment name, however friendly name you would like to define it, but you'll notice here I've labeled it Capture Client 2. In this case, I've created a license group inside my SonicWall account. Once this account is created, I can then go in and view those particular licenses as part of that solution, as part of that endpoint. So from here, I'm actually going to go over and click on my client licenses, and you'll see that I have two, Capture Client and Capture Client 2. Now, if I want to go in and manage these, I can actually click on the list view here, bring this up, and once the screen loads, I can go in and modify the licensing for my specific endpoint client deployments. So in this case, I have Capture Client and Capture Client 2. If I click on licenses, you'll see that I can go in and add different elements here. Incidentally, by creating the multiple groups as you've seen here, this is where we actually create the multi-tenant element. So from this point, I look on my different services here and I can see Capture Client is licensed. I can see that's configured there. I can also see the DPI SSL enforcement. Remember, this is included with the Capture Client license. It's automatically tied together. So this is enabled for the Capture Client. I can see it's also on Capture Client 2. I'm going to go and activate my free trial just to demonstrate this. So I can click on my Capture Client 2, the group I just created, and I'm going to click on Try. This will enable or start a license of 30 days for my demo of this product. And my license is now created. So from here, now I can log in to the Capture Client portal. This will allow me to go and manage the individual deployment and individual configuration of Capture Client. Here, bring up a new tab, or I can click on the service status here and manage it directly from this location. In this case, I'm going to bring up a new tab, go to captureclient.sonicwall.com, log into my Capture Client portal, and here you'll see I'm logging in with my SonicWall account. This is using a chained authentication back to the same login that you use in your SonicWall account. You'll see here I'm logging in. No peeking on the password. And here's my dashboard. You'll notice at the top, because I have created multiple groups, this is where I get a drop-down box at the top for multiple tenants. And you'll see that number at the top, that CB000. I'm going to show you how this links together here. So what I can actually do is go back in to the Capture Client under SonicWall, and I can see under Capture Client 2.0, when I scroll up here, I can actually see that CB000 number. So I can match that number up with the appropriate tenant. This allows me to organize my tenants. You'll see I have 3 here, one tied to a firewall. So you can see I have a firewall serial number here at the bottom there. So I have 3 different instances. But now I want to manage those names and make sure they're organized correctly. So I can go down to Settings on the left-hand side, click on Tenant Settings, and change the name to the appropriate name, my friendly name that I wish to organize the different tenant settings on. So I can see here I name it Capture Demo 1. I can create this another one here, Capture. This will be actually one that's tied to the firewall. So this will actually be my capture on Zeus. So I can actually do Capture Demo Zeus. This is my Zeus firewall if you looked at my SonicWall account. And finally, I'm going to go to the last one, the one I just triggered, the one I just created, and I'm going to make this one Capture Demo 2. So now I have my friendly names tied in correlation here, so I can actually organize them to the different customers and or network deployments that I need. This allows me to organize them in such a way that both myself and other admins for if I'm in a managed service provider or managing multiple networks, I can keep them organized so that I can deploy them uniquely. This allows me to go in and manage them directly. The second element of that is going to be going into the actual installation. So as I proceed in through the SonicWall deployment, the next level of setting up the configuration of the client is the DPI SSL enforcement. This is the certificate deployment configuration of the Capture Client. The primary goal of Capture Client is obviously Next-Gen AV, but a second element is actually to deploy the certificates used for our DPI SSL inspection on the firewalls. At this point, you can see here I have under my trusted certificates, I only have the default policy. And here I'm going to actually add one to it. So from my server, from one of my AD member servers, I'm bringing up my console, my MMC console, and I've brought in the certificates extension. And I'm going to export my AD cert simply by exporting the cert from the AD, clicking on Next. I am not going to export the private key in this deployment. I am just going to export the DER X.509 configuration, give it a name. Call it NetReaper here. It's a nice little play on my lab. And next and finish. The export was successful. You'll see the cert is now on my desktop right over here to the left. Minimize this. I'm going to go into the SSL settings and upload the certificate that I just created. I add that to the SSL certificates. You'll see the NetReaper cert is now installed. Now I have to make sure it's part of the policy. So I go back to Security Policies into Trusted Certificates. I'm going to click on Edit, and I'm going to go to SSL Certificates, and I'm going to add that particular cert that I just uploaded. So I click on Add, and then you'll see the NetReaper cert there. I can just click on Add. Now my NetReaper cert is in the default Trusted Certificates policy. This requires that any SonicWall or any endpoint that has the SonicWall Capture Client installed will automatically get that DPI SSL cert installed on its operating system certificate store. The next level of the Capture installation is actually setting up the enforcement model on the firewall if you're using that, or just doing a straight up installation. So we'll cover both elements here. Here I'm in my SonicWall firewall. This is a nice little PZ400 that I'm demonstrating this with. This is that Zeus firewall that you saw me register on the Capture Client. I'm going to go into my network configuration here, and I'm going to go down to zones. You'll see here I have a workstation zone created. On this workstation zone, you'll see there's a couple of extra checkboxes that are missing, specifically DPI SSL enforcement, and over here you'll actually see my client AV enforcement. Neither one of those are checked. So I'm going to bring up the zone configuration from my workstation zone. Click on the configuration dialog, bring up my menu, and right here you'll see enable DPI SSL enforcement and enable client AV enforcement. Click on OK. Now those are now applied. So at this point I'm going to go down to my security services configuration, where I'm going to actually configure the properties. I'll bring up my client AV enforcement or my DPI SSL enforcement, and you can see the configuration here where I'm actually going to add the networks to the appropriate IPs to the enforcement list. Even though you've turned it on at the zone level, you still have to add the address objects that are required to have the cert deployed. Now you'll have to create some here. You'll have to create the appropriate IPs that you would actually do. So you would click on the plus button and add that IP manually. Once you have the object created, you can then move it over to the right, and that would apply the DPI SSL enforcement to that specific host, or range of hosts, or subnet, however you see fit. The same would apply under the client AV enforcement. From here, I still have to go down to the SentinelOne AV enforcement list, and then I actually can modify things like low risk, medium risk. You can see that there for the policies. I'm going to go down, I'm going to actually add the SentinelOne over here, add the SentinelOne AV enforcement or exclusion. Again, remember this has to tie to the number of hosts in the network, so you'll add the range of IPs. If you only have 5 licenses, as I do here, you would want to make sure you only have 5 IPs listed. So assuming my object was already created, I can add that to the list, and then my client AV enforcement is enabled. Once you see under here, you'll also see the DPI SSL is configured, and you'll see that I've deployed the same NetReaper certificate on the firewall that you saw in the Capture Client policy setup as well. So now my firewall is set up. My firewall is set up to do enforcement on DPI SSL and on Capture Client. So once my client machine tries to connect to the internet, you'll see here they actually try to connect to Google. They'll get the download and install option, where it'll force them to actually do the install of the Capture Client. And that's how they install Capture Client directly from client enforcement. Without Capture Client, they can actually go to the admin portal of the Capture Client portal, captureclient.sonicwall.com, and manually download the MSI installation or the PKG Mac OS install file, and manually install it as well. This allows them to directly install it or push it out with a group policy or other options that admins may want to be able to enforce. You'll see here the endpoints installing, going through the normal installation dialog. And because I've downloaded the client directly from the portal, the tenant ID is automatically tagged to that install file. Over on the left-hand side here, you'll see that the client is being installed. It will install the default policy, which does include my DPI SSL cert. It does take a couple of minutes, and once it's completed here, these screens will turn green and actually require that the end user reboot the system. So that'll pop up here in just a second. It is now downloading the policy. You see applying policy in the top left. And then our system will actually turn green that the system's been fully protected by the Capture Client once it's installed. Now you'll see the version number and the anti-tamper modes have all been enabled. Now the end user or the admin will have to reboot the machine to complete the installation. And that is this Capture Client install process. That's how it actually pulls down the actual policy. The next level is actually of Capture Client. The next demonstration is how it actually prevents the breach and how you can actually do something like roll back. In this particular case, the SonicWall Capture Client is running. I'm in my dashboard, and what I'm going to actually do is bring up my Reaper desktop, one of my lab machines here, and I can actually bring up the different statistics about this machine. I can actually see everything about that required that workstation, whether it's IP address. I can do different commands like uninstall client, or even view details, and actually see the different information of my endpoint. see that it's Windows 10 Enterprise, its IP addresses, its MAC addresses. I can see all of its settings. I can see what services are running on the appliance. I can see if it's online, that it's activated. I can see its networking configuration. I can click on processes and see all the processes that are running on the workstation. I can see all the different services, what executables are running, so on and so forth. All of that information is displayed here. I can also see the policies that have been pushed out. In this case, I've already pushed out my default policy. Here I'm going to go back to the dashboard, and I can see I have one online client, just that one lab machine that's currently running. So from here, I'm actually going to go and download some threats and show you the actual preventing of the breach, or the prevention of the zero-day malware. In this particular case, I'm going to minimize this, put it over to the side here, minimize my capture client window. Normally this would sit down as that little notification in the taskbar. You would normally have it running on the desktop like this, but just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to now bring up a piece of malware that I've already staged for this particular test. And rdp.exe. It's a zero-day threat that our capture ATP on the firewall was able to prevent. But now I'm not behind the firewall, so I want to stop that from getting to the endpoint. At this case, I'm downloading the exploit. You'll immediately see that capture client has turned red. Now, in the background, capture client is actually deleting the file. So you can see the file here is showed in my downloads, but it was actually automatically deleted by capture client. In the event that the breach was unsuccessful at preventing that download, and actually was able to detonate. For example, I've downloaded another zero-day. You can see that RDP was gone. But in this case, I'm going to actually download another one called Swift, another zero-day exploit. I'm going to run this exploit, but this one didn't get detected in time, or didn't get detected at all. It was a zero-day threat that never before seen, and was actually very sneaky. The capture client immediately realizes, oh no, the system's been encrypted, and it is turned red, so it does notify you. In this particular case, the capture client, you can log in, the admin can log in and try to remediate that exploit and undo the damage. Or, in some cases, click on roll back. And this allows the admin to actually leveraging VSS service in Windows, capture that zero-day threat and prevent the exploit, and then roll back successfully using the Windows VSS to recover the snapshot to a known good. And from there you can see our capture client is in the green again and is back to normal. And that's how SonicWall can prevent the breach even when you're not behind the SonicWall firewall. That's a zero-day threat prevention model, and that's an end-to-end security solution. For more, please check us out online at www.sonicwall.com or reach out to your friendly neighborhood SonicWall sales team and we'll be happy to help you out. Thanks. Have a great day.